Hello and welcome to World Talks, wherever word matters. I'm your host, Sasha Farbach. Now, Poland is prepared to step up electricity exports to Ukraine if Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico follows through on his threat to cut off backup power supplies to the war-torn country. The Polish government stands ready to boost domestic power production to compensate for any imbalances that Ukraine's strained system would suffer in the event of a Slovak move, according to the official, who asked not to be identified as the talks are private. Now, to discuss all this further, we're joined by Rudik, Ukrainian MP, Voice Party leader. Good to have you on the program.
Hello, Sasha, and thank you so much for having me.
Kira, let's start with this first. This threat, if Fico goes ahead with it, how vulnerable is Ukraine and how vulnerable are Ukrainians in the power grid?
We are indeed very vulnerable because, as you know, our majority of the energy system has been destroyed by the Russian attacks over the last couple of years. And in the worst situations, we are one step away from the total blackout. And Russia was never hiding its intents to bring Ukraine down to the darkness and cold, especially during the winter. We have seen the intensifying of the attacks of our energy production infrastructure over the last couple of weeks. And right now I'm talking to you being on diesel generator because there is an energy outages in Kiev as well. So we are relying on our partners, on our neighboring countries who are providing us with the electricity imports so that we can sustain it and decrease the amount of the outages for our people. But indeed, we are one attack away from very negative consequences. And this is why we are grateful that in this situation, for our people, we are not alone and we have a hand from our neighbors and allies. And beforehand, there were 4 countries who were supporting us. It's Czech Republic, Slovakia, Poland, and Hungary. And if Slovakia will pull out of this support, then we will have rely on the remaining countries. And we are indeed very grateful for Poland's promise that we will not be facing the darkness and cold of the winter alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think even as President Zelensky said recently on a tweet that could be up to 20% of electricity that's provided by Slovakia. I mean, that's, I believe, rather a large number. And I suppose even if in worst case scenario, you mentioned some countries, I mean, this would take some time, I imagine, for some of these electricity grids and a lot of this power to then finally reach Ukraine. So can you tell us anything about how quickly those blackouts would be, how quickly people would feel that immediate impact?
Well, we believe that right now, when we know that something like this may be coming, there are already plans of the rebalancing of the import of the additional electricity from Poland. However, we need to understand that there are limitations of the capacity that can be heading over Ukraine, given the systems that are in place right now. And, you know, Sasha, this is the main issue with the electricity and energy grids and energy developing stations is that you cannot build it very quickly. Like if you want to build the nuclear station, it is at least 5 years. Even if the war was over today, it would take years for us to rebuild the existing infrastructure and also to build additional capacities so we can get more import from our partners. And this is why we understand that Slovakia is making this threat because using Ukrainian pipeline for transporting of Russian gas is one of the huge interests of Russia. If we will stop transporting the gas through our territory and we will not renew the contract, and President Zelensky was very clear that we are not planning to, Russia will be losing at least $6 billion of the profits a year. And I think The moment Russia starts saying that they don't care about it, and the moment that they are saying that the Western countries will lose more of this, we know that their propaganda is taking it very seriously, and we know that they will be suffering from this. So when we are asking from our partners to implement sanctions, it is very adequate from our side not to continue dealing with Russia at any point. We had previous contracts that is over this year, and we are not going to trade with the aggressor, same way as we are asking for our allies not to trade with the aggressor as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speaking of allies, I mean, if you still look broadly, though, I mean, you've said now Poland might be able to help in worst case scenario, potentially other countries as well. What about Brussels? What about the European Union as a whole? What can Europe now do for Ukraine in this situation? Is there any resources or anything that you'd want Brussels to muster at this point?
Well, we are looking at finding additional capacities for the ways of importing of energy. However, let's look at it more strategically and say that the main ask from our Brussels colleagues is to make sure that the sanctions that were implemented actually work, and the sanctions against the shadow fleet from Russia and their ability to trade and still get money and earn money from the war and from trading with our countries has been decreased. Because Russians, with their propaganda, they are laughing and saying that Europe is paying for the war from two pockets. One way of still paying money for Russian resources, and the other pocket in supporting Ukraine. And this is actually very unfortunate, because to stop trade with Russia was one of the first and most significant hits that will hit Russian economy and their ability to continue attacking us. There is another side that we have been saying since the day one of full-scale invasion. It's a huge amount of Russian money that are being allocated in Belgium, Euroclear right now. It's up to 300 billion euros, and these money are sitting there. There are some percentage over them that are being transferred to Ukraine, but we know that the solution to many of our problems would be to take Russian money and use them not only for the Ukraine's rebuild of our energy infrastructure and covering for all those costs what Russia has destroyed, but actually giving us those money so we can use them to win the war with.
Mm-hmm. Right. So many issues there. I mean, you're talking about those frozen Russian assets that have been very slow to actually free up for anything. And we know that I think certain leaders in Europe have been saying very much that that's something that we should really go into more. But that's a different issue as well. If we're looking at imports as well, just some figures from the first 2 quarters of this year, of 2024. I mean, if we're looking at Russian imports from LNG into the European Union, it's about 19% still coming from Russia. And that has remained fairly steady. And in fact, I think if we compare some quarters, they've been a bit higher. This kind of point now, Kira, do you think we are at this point with Slovakia's threat because not more was done to force a diversification of energy earlier? I mean, we've had now several years to prepare Europe. Poland has done a lot. Germany has done more as well. But did let's say Europe drop the ball here and not push Slovakia and others to diversify faster away from Russia?
Of course, there has been at least 3 years, if not more, to make the tough decisions that need to be there, and to make sure that your economy and your energy does not depend on the country that have started a full-scale invasion aggression in the middle of Europe. And I think it would be rather naive hoping that it would be a business as usual for countries like Slovakia or Hungary, no matter what Putin is promising them. And then it becomes a globally European problem when countries and their leaders are acting like that, threatening to then tie them and cut the import of the electricity to Ukraine. And this is actually unfortunate that on the policy level and on the political level, there has not been stronger decision like that. Yeah. Sasha, do we think that the situation will with Russia become better? I don't think there is anyone who is hoping that, right? Because you see that...
Well, we have to continue to hope that Europe remains united. That's the challenge that will continue to unravel here. But we hope that for now, we continue with that solidarity with Ukraine. We'll have to conclude it there. Rudik, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
And thank you for watching. That concludes this edition of World Talks. My name is Sasha Farbach. Goodbye.